I have so many mixed emotions about this movie, and I'm not even sure how to feel about it. I don't hate it though. The movie opens up with like a vaudeville style show, which was like the internet before the internet, if you don't know what vaudeville is. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where a black woman comes out topless and is meant to look like a racist depiction of an African tribesman kind of thing. And within the context of the movie, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it has always been baffling me how casually racist media was and can still be, and then people will almost gaslight you into why it's okay and how you feel about the depictions don't matter. Like throughout my childhood, I would just casually see overt racist ass cartoons and just put it to the side and just like not think about it. And in 2024, people are arguing why a black samurai who was a real person can't be in a game where you fight a secret society who wants to rule the world using ancient Apple technology. Anyway, that's not super important. I will say though, it is kind of odd how almost Disney-esque this movie is, and I can't really explain it to you what is happening. There isn't a whole lot of dialogue throughout the movie, but it is genuinely very heartwarming. This disabled grandmother adores her grandson, who is like a mute or something, who I believe parents died. They don't really get too much into it. And she wants nothing more than for her grandbaby to be happy. She sees him take a bit of interest in piano, so she dusts an old one off. She gets him a dog, a train set, and then she sees he's interested in bikes, which turns into him wanting to participate in the Tour de France. And it is this beautiful, gentle story. She helps him train until he becomes this weird, looking character from the Addams family, and the art style is just so like rustic but also off-putting in a way that is kind of charming. Like everyone looks so disfigured to the point where it wouldn't be off base to compare them to a body horror, but it kind of is endearing, like genuinely endearing, and it's super hard to explain. Like you have to watch it for yourself. I immediately fell in love with the grandmother. Like I love seeing sweet old people in movies and TV shows. I immediately root for them no matter what, as long as they're a sweet person, because I've always had like a great relationship with my grandparents. They're cool as hell, so whenever I see old people in movies, I'm rooting for them 100% of the time. You know how there's like a website where people can check if the dog dies in a movie? There needs to be one of those for like sweet old ladies in a movie. I need to know if a sweet old lady dies in a movie, and if she does, I don't know if I even want to watch it really. But anyway, back to her grandson. He eats, sleeps, and breathes cycling. Like he probably weighs 120 pounds and 60 of that is just his legs. His legs are so goddamn thick he could kick a horse and it would yell ow. This film does so much with so little narratively. Again, it doesn't have much dialogue, to the point where the dialogue becomes almost an annoyance. I often will find myself entirely enthralled in what's happening and immersed in the story, and then I will hear someone talking and I have to take my focus away and focus on the subtitles, because obviously I can't speak croissant baguette Descartes. Also, I have to say a lot of the time the dialogue didn't add much to the story. It was mostly just sprinkles a lot of the time. Something like a little extra that didn't make it better or worse, but it was a nice touch, I have to say. While participating in the Tour de France, her grandson, whose number is 69, nice, is kidnapped by some Wilson Fisk in the Spider-Verse movie looking dudes. For some reason, not quite sure. And apparently it doesn't matter to grandma either, because Bruno, the faithful dog, uses his nose to find the missing grandson, has been captured and is placed on a boat making a voyage out to sea. So what does grandma do? Contact the police? Nope, she steals a paddle boat and chases after the ship. Then what ensues is probably one of the most epic montages I've ever seen, which is crazy to say because it's just her paddling after a cargo ship on the ocean, but the song that plays almost feels like anime levels of epic. I don't think I can play it without getting copyright strike, but it is very much insane. It's like this insane orchestral music with choir. Like I heard it and I felt like I could walk through a brick wall JoJo style. This epic adventure to rescue her grandson leads her to America, where everyone is fat, which feels like a tired stereotype. This came out in the early 2000s, so that's fine, but like Americans have a lot of fat people, but it's not like they're invented here and we just ship them out and they exist nowhere else. I've been to Europe. A lot of y'all's grandmamas are fat, and I love them for it. They're precious babushkas who I would jump into a dirty river to save. But chill, not all of us are fat here. Grandma, because she didn't bring any money, is forced to sleep under a bridge and just randomly starts drumming on a wheel when the triplets she watched on the TV like 20 years ago appear out of nowhere and start singing. And don't get me wrong, they did their thing, but I would shit my pants if I was just hanging out and three witches appeared out of the darkness and started harmonizing. Did I summon you somehow? What is happening? The witches take Grandma and Bruno back to their rundown apartment, which feels like a museum of their fall from grace. If anything, it's filled with instruments and mementos of their heyday, awards, nestled in this dingy, disgusting, roach-infested apartment in a shit area with prostitutes in the hallway. A fall from grace only comparable to, I don't know, Dr. Disrespect, I guess? But all of that aside, they seem relatively happy and okay with their life. The movie shows this sort of sad life in this sad neighborhood as they do their nightly routine, as one of the sisters goes out to a river to fish. fish, and it's just kind of sad, and I feel super bad for them until the sister sits down a fish and throws a fucking grenade into the river. I have no commentary on that. It's just an insane turn of events to watch transpire. Like, I didn't laugh, but that's not because it wasn't funny. It was comedically incredible. I'm just dead inside. Grandma has been living with the triplets at least long enough for seasons to change, which is crazy because what about your grandson? Like, bro's a little weird, but that's still family, you know? This is going to be super long-winded, but stick with me here. I promise I will loop back and it will all make sense. In Slaughterhouse 5, when the main character is kidnapped by aliens, he is like, why me? And the aliens are like, that is a very earthling thing to ask, Mr. Pilgrim. Why you? Why us for that matter? Why anything? Because this moment simply is. Have you ever seen bugs trapped in amber? Yes. Well, here we are, Mr. Pilgrim, trapped in the amber of this moment. There is no why. When I watch movies with the purpose of reacting/reviewing them, I look at them with a magnifying glass and I'm always asking myself, why did they choose X? What was the point? Is there a bigger point narratively that I'm missing? And something this movie does well that I've found is that it often leaves me asking, why this scene? It's possible I'm not understanding the bigger picture or whatever. I'm definitely no film expert. I'm just a dude who likes talking to a microphone for the amusement of strangers. But this movie on several occasions has made me go, why? But I realized that there isn't a why. There's no reason and there doesn't have to be. It's just entertaining. And I think I really enjoy that about this movie. I don't have to think too hard. I can just be trapped in the amber of the moment, which is good because this movie is so odd that I still have no idea why the cyclists were kidnapped in the first place. Like, I'm sure they'll explain it, but for a brief moment they showed us them hooked up to like this parade float kind of thing in front of a projector and just cycling hooked up to IVs of wine, I guess. I don't know. I hope they explain it. Speaking of odd, Grandma finds a clue to where her grandson might be, and that's awesome. But while back at the Three Witches apartment, they're licking like frozen frog sickles or whatever, and while this movie is phenomenal as far as sound design goes, I want to chew through a brick wall listening to this scene. So it's finally revealed that the men were kidnapped for an overly convoluted gambling ring, which is crazy and dumb as a plot point, I have to say. Because why would you kidnap human beings, especially ones with spotlight on them during a televised global event, just to have them race on a set you had built just for people to gamble? That's overly complicated, especially as a mob boss. Like, why are you drawing unnecessary attention to yourself? Speaking of mob bosses, the Three Witches and Grandma decided that the best way to rescue everyone is to go alone without telling the police, throw a grenade when everyone starts blasting, and escape on the parade float that the cyclists were riding on, which is then preceded by the craziest display of the dumbest henchmen I've ever seen during the slowest car chase I've ever witnessed. Their aim makes stormtroopers look like marksmen, and they're being eluded by two drugged out cyclists and a 6'7" geriatric former diva on a parade float. And the movie just kinda ends after that scene, with the final scene being her grandson watching them as a movie, making it full circle and a reference back to earlier in the film, and the grandma and the dog dies. It's from old age, obviously, because the grandson is old, but man, gotta say, fuck this movie. Kidding, but the grandma and the dog dying, come on now, you don't have to hit me twice. Overall, I want to say this movie has a lot of things going for it that are awesome. The art style, the sound design. Like, if you're into Foley, this movie is for you. The music, how it can tell a story with little to no dialogue. And then there's a lot that it does poorly. It kind of drags, and it has parts that add nothing to the story, making it longer than necessary, or time that could have been used better suited developing the characters in the world, or something. Anything else, really. The weird racism in the beginning that was entirely pointless. Like, it added nothing, said nothing. Like, I almost just turned the movie off because it was so weird and off-putting. Sometimes the lack of dialogue works against it. Just having a little bit would have helped because there isn't much, so when they do talk, it feels very impactful sometimes. Like, the film doesn't always use it well, though. For example, during the race, they're listening to the radio. That could have just been mumbles. Having dialogue there didn't add anything to the story overall. But a time in which it was very impactful was in the end, when the grandson, who was mute, finally says something as an old man and answers his grandmother's question that she asked him earlier in the film. That was great, but also because the movie doesn't have dialogue, some of the scenes felt like you could have just taken this out and given us something with more exposition. Speaking of the ending, I liked and didn't like it. I liked that it was an impactful callback to the beginning of the movie. I didn't like, and this might be a little bit nitpicky, him watching himself and everyone else get away on the TV. It gives it a sort of meh taste. I also didn't like that it was a time skip, but you're also watching yourself. Was it all real? What happened after you got home? What happened to the old witches? I don't know, I think the movie is fine, but definitely not a 7.7 like it is on IMDb. Nowhere close. I feel like people are giving it a bit extra because of the nostalgia of it being from 2003. This movie is a straight 6 or 6.6 at best. It's good, but an almost 8 out of 10 is madness.